And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this weekend edition on the 19th day of November. Well, 25 degrees and mostly cloudy right here in Brisbane. Hey, it's wonderful to have your company on this Saturday. So how are you doing? Doing okay? Very good. So today we have the weekend edition where we have the news update and a musical treat towards the end. And may I begin by congratulating Queensland Multicultural Council for a very successful end-of-year annual dinner function last night, attended by many community leaders of the multicultural community. And congratulations is in order for Usha Chandra being awarded the life membership of Queensland Multicultural Council for the amount of work that she has put in for the community volunteers and, of course, serving in Queensland Multicultural Council. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, let's move on and let's see what's making news. Well, first of all, what is happening with this flood? There is a lot of anger in the community.
A town with almost nothing left is busier than ever. It's full speed ahead to get Eugowra back on track.
I've had a gutful.
But not everyone's happy with the initial response.
People were just left to their own devices. We had no food, no clothing, no one telling them what's going to happen next because no one was here.
The Premier promised financial support to everyone, from landholders to small businesses and councils.
My focus right now is getting every single person back on their feet, finishing the clean-up, getting people into temporary accommodation and rebuilding this town.
We will be here with you every day, every step of the way.
This one-stop shop for post, banking and Centrelink will be cleaned up and ready to open on Monday. That's after all the mail dries out.
So it's a really essential service for those basic needs that people living in a rural community need.
It'll be the first shop to rebound, just when locals need a boost in morale.
Hopefully it will brighten their outlook and make them a little bit more positive.
Down the street, Greg Augustin is in two minds about whether to retire or reopen. He's optimistic people will wade through this mess.
It'd be a shame if it just dies.
With each day that passes, there's a growing determination in Eugowra that the town will be rebuilt, even though it's almost unrecognisable right now.
So we've just been coming down the river and we've located this little fella.
This dog, named by police divers as Lucky, was found in a tree after days without food or water. It's since been rescued, offering a glimmer of hope for this splintered town. Xanthi Gregory, ABC News, Eugowra.
And wonderful to see the dog being rescued there and reunited with the owners. And what a devastation the town has witnessed. And as the Premier has mentioned that they will, his promise to make sure that the aid and support is provided to each and everyone in that town. All right, now, of course, the other news is the Asia Pacific Leaders Summit. What did they agree on? And they have agreed to tackle trade.
An international pariah continuing down a dangerous path. North Korea firing another long-range ballistic missile just as Asia-Pacific leaders meet in Thailand.
We again call for North Korea to stop further unlawful destabilizing acts.
The United States, Japan, South Korea, Canada, New Zealand and Australia standing together in condemnation. The missile test further fueling fears the Asia-Pacific is on the brink of armed conflict.
Australia supports the convening of an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council.
Until the launch, most of the attention had been focused on Moscow.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine has had an international impact.
The economic cost of war made clear at the APEC summit, a forum covering more than half the global economy. Leaders grappling with massive problems such as surging energy prices.
This isn't about just any one nation taking action.
One of the big players in the room, China, continuing its diplomatic campaign. Japan's Prime Minister meeting face-to-face with Xi Jinping for the first time in 3 years.
I expressed my serious concerns about the situation in the East China Sea, including the Senkaku Islands and military activities such as China's ballistic missile launches.
Another source of tension, Taiwan, represented at APEC, given its relative economic heft. The Prime Minister indicating Australia won't back its bid to join a regional trade pact.
We don't want to see any unilateral action which alters that status quo.
With such a formidable list of challenges, the hope is that forums such as the APEC summit provide an opportunity for conversation rather than conflict. The problem is many of the countries targeted by such diplomacy simply don't want to listen, making the task of bringing them to heel all the more difficult. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Bangkok.
And difficult as it may be, but I think that is the right way to go and the right thing to do, or bring everyone together, and dialogue is the way forward. Well, right now, carbon and the carbon counting, are we doing it right? Is it, the facts and figures are okay? Here's some checks and balances.
When it comes to Australia's contribution to climate change, the Australian government says we're responsible for just 1.3% of global greenhouse gas emissions. But tech entrepreneur Mike Cannon-Brookes recently claimed the figure is actually much higher. He tweeted, as only 25 million people, we generate and export over 5% of the world's emissions today. Is he correct? Well, there are different ways of accounting for greenhouse gas emissions. The one the UN and the Australian government use counts only emissions made within a country's borders. That's where the 1.3% figure comes from. But some activists, like Mike Cannon-Brookes, argue countries should be responsible for the emissions they export too. So if we include the emissions from our exported coal and liquefied natural gas, our percentage of total greenhouse gases goes up to 3.6. It drops to 3.3% though if, for consistency, we exclude the emissions we import from other countries. Now, if we look only at global fossil fuel emissions and exclude those created by industries like agriculture, because we're such a mining powerhouse, our proportion of the world's total emissions jumps to 4.8%, or 4.4% if we net out the emissions from imported fossil fuels. Now, whether this is a fairer way of calculating the greenhouse gases we as a country are responsible for is another conversation. But regardless of which way we calculate our emissions, we find Mike Cannon-Brookes' claim to be overstated. For all the details, head to the website. I'm Madeline Morris.
And there we go. We are overstated, as it said. So that's a very good fact check there on finding out what's really happening. Well, right now, what is happening with Twitter? So Elon Musk and his leadership, and there's many hundreds of employees who are fleeing the company.
Well, Joe, it all boils down to an email sent out to staff by the new owner of Twitter, Elon Musk, earlier this week. He told them to prepare for Twitter 2.0, where expectations would be incredibly hardcore. They'd be asked to work extremely long hours at a high intensity, or they could leave with 3 months' pay. And it turns out a lot of them have chosen the latter option, taking to social media over the past 24 to 48 hours, posting messages of farewell, even using the hashtag love the place you worked in the past tense. Now, the exact number of staff who have departed as part of this latest exodus remains unclear, but more than 100 did post on social media. Elon Musk, of course, took over Twitter over the past month, and since then the workplace has halved. Elon Musk, we know that he fired top executives just days into his tenure, and tech analysts have described these latest developments and the situation at Twitter HQ at the moment as an absolute circus.
And it continues to just get, I think, more and more into the surreal, given Musk has really owned Twitter now. If you look at the first, call it 3 weeks, it's been a train wreck situation. Culturally, start off with the 50% headcount cuts. You knew Musk was going to cut, but now it's almost a Game of Thrones between internal and Twitter employees and Musk. And there's concerns about where the platform goes and ultimately can he turn it around.
So, Britt, what does this mean for the platform and for the millions of Twitter users worldwide?
Well, that is the big question, and why we are all watching this space so closely. Elon Musk himself tweeted, he said he's not worried. There are plenty of the best people left behind, but you really do need to question the security and the stability of a social media platform like Twitter now that so much experience has left the building. Those tech experts, they described it to me as Elon Musk, he's the pilot of this plane now with no experience and no air crew left there to support him. As for the happenings at Twitter HQ in San Francisco today, we understand there are reports that Elon Musk is meeting with coders who are still left at the company. And in the past few hours, he has tweeted himself an update for users on Twitter's freedom of speech policy. Comedian Kathy Griffin and Jordan Peterson have been reinstated to the social media platform, but a decision on former President Donald Trump has not yet been made. Joe?
That's the latest on Twitter, and it would be wonderful to see that all those people who have been stood down get some kind of compensation just fully. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, of course, moving on, the next news is about COVID-19 and the cases, and where many places the masks have now been mandated.
The new COVID wave has arrived, and while most government mandates are gone, masks are reappearing on major cruise liners, and in New South Wales at least are again mandatory in all areas of hospitals and health clinics. Authorities guesstimate we're midway through this wave.
I hope that we're halfway through it and that we see a short, sharp peak and that we can be through the worst of this over the next few weeks.
That's what happened in Singapore, and it's an example pointed to by those setting health policies here. But one epidemiologist is cautious about comparisons with our neighbours.
Singapore is a very different place than here, and there's kind of more mask wearing, more rule following without them necessarily having to be laws.
In Australia, cases have been rising for almost a month. The latest weekly data shows hospitalisations are up by 27%.
Impacts on the healthcare system often lag a few weeks behind that, so we still have concerns that there'll be significant impacts from this wave into the holiday season.
But despite that looming rise, the Commonwealth is set to remove special COVID-related hospital payments by the end of December. The Health Minister wasn't available for comment, but Dr McMullen describes the move as ludicrous.
Also watching nervously are those in the aged care sector.
It's going to be a tough few months. It's probably going to be a tough Christmas for aged care residents, but also for the people who care for them.
She wants the public to consider the lives of those more frail and behave accordingly.
The further COVID spreads within the community, the more we see the impact in aged care.
A reminder that for many, the pandemic is far from over. Penny Timms.
So the pandemic, as they reckon, is far from over, and this peak, it is thought that it might be a short, sharp peak, and I really, really do hope that it would be that, guys. Well, right now, the last news for today, before we go into our little bonus song segment, is the man found guilty of downing MH17 is the report.
After 8 years of anguish, finally some answers. Matthew Horder's parents, Susan and Howard, perished in the attack, which caused a trail of destruction in eastern Ukraine and repercussions around the world.
Today was about confirming the facts and confirming the truth, and the court provided that for us.
A panel of judges found there was compelling evidence to prove a Russian missile launcher was smuggled into Ukraine and fired at MH17 by Russian-backed rebels who believed it was a military aircraft. 25-year-old Jack O'Brien was returning home after a trip to Europe when his life was cut short.
I also feel sad though, because, for all of us it doesn't change anything.
Russians Igor Girkin and Sergei Dubinsky were found guilty of murder for their roles in sourcing the weapon, along with Ukrainian rebel commander Leonid Karchenko. Oleg Pulatov was acquitted, but the offenders are still at large, and Australia is demanding Russia hand them over.
These people could decide to down a civilian aircraft.
Sorry.
Hang on, just take a sec. With children on it? It's beyond words.
For the victims' families, this judgment offers some answers, but there's also a deep sense of anguish that the conflict that led to this atrocity is still raging, and the man pulling the strings is showing no signs of letting up.
The tragedy is that Russia could have admitted responsibility, could have apologised and paid compensation back then.
Putin, stop this senseless violence. We do not need it, and Ukraine has had enough.
Their lives have been torn apart by war. 8 years later, millions of Ukrainians are still living in Russia's firing line. Nick Dole, ABC News, Amsterdam.
So there you are, what do you reckon? Is it justice done, or is it too little too late? And as the offenders are still at large, and Russia is refusing to hand them over and as per Australia's demand. We'll see what happens and we'll follow up on that case. But right now, on a lighter note, here's the musical interlude for this week. And a beautiful rendition there by Bondita Chakravarti, and a very, very beautiful number. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for the next Music Junction, which will be presented by Ajay Savi. Stay tuned for that. Well, right now it's time to go to our functions and events that are taking place right here in Brisbane. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you on this weekend edition on the 19th day of November. Well, 28 degrees and mostly sunny in Brisbane, and would love to see you all at the concert tonight, and the concert being the one that we have been supporting, and it is going to be a great concert, and I hope that you can all make it to that concert. The concert that I'm talking about is this one here, and that is the Sahana Banerjee live in concert tonight with Queensland Sangeet Mela. Try booking is where you can get your tickets if you haven't booked yet. Would like to see you all there tonight. Until then, it's goodbye from us.